Who are the best champions in Paladins is something that a lot of people want answered, and today I'm going to try and answer just that for the current meta of OB40 and the start of 2017. Actually, the last time I did this coincided with the Reddit poll where they basically polled everybody to see who they thought was overpowered and underpowered, and now again it's been done. And it's been maybe a month since the last one, so it's quite interesting to look back and see how things have changed. I'm not going to talk too much about their poll, just some of the things that have obviously changed, and some of these have been the nerfs and buffs over OB39 and OB40, and one was reduction of damage to Androxus has knocked him slightly down from the top spot to only A+ from S. Also, Grok, if you look at the bottom, when his healing rain card was fixed, making his healing basically doesn't do as much as before, he's gone down straight down to the lowest one I've ever seen, which is 2.75 in the B category. And with some buffs, Makoa's come up the rankings, and we've also seen some people fall, like there's Barracks fall a little bit because they've had some nerfs. Ruckus has actually gone up the rankings a bit, and I think that's because people are sort of fleshing him out. Grover's slightly come up because he's got buffs, Skye's slightly come up, but these are all to be a little bit expected. The weird one for me is that Tyra is the 4th top voted champion at the moment. It's because a lot of people perceive the new champions that they haven't had time to flesh out, work out some defenses against, see them as overpowered. But for me, that isn't really the case. Also for fun, I thought on my own Discord I'd do a very quick, basically I just gave everybody about 20 minutes to do it, did a little quiz and got some answers about what people thought was overpowered and underpowered. My scale was actually between 1 and 10. The Paladins Reddit one was between 1 and 7. So it is slightly different, and 60 people responded to it, which is way less. Can't see how many people voted on the Reddit one, but I'm guessing it's quite a lot of people, maybe a few hundred. So my 61 wasn't as a big sample size, but it's still fairly the same as the Reddit one, Grok being right at the bottom there, although people voted him a 4 out of 10, so slightly underpowered, whereas he probably is quite underpowered at the moment. And then everybody else is slightly overpowered or really overpowered. There's nobody that's just sort of midway really near the 5 or the 6 mark. There's only like 5.5s and upwards. Actually, let's look. Barrack is only very slightly over the midway mark. But some of the interesting ones again, Cassie is the one everybody thinks is most overpowered. A lot of people think that Androxus is overpowered as well because he's got a 7 in mine, and Evie as well got 7.033. Actually, Evie is higher, and as I'm talking, somebody else has filled in the form, so it's gone up to 61 and changed a bit, and Evie's gone above Androxus, so there we go. Also, Meldamba's high on the healing, which I think sort of goes along with the changes, the nerfs that Ying saw. But let's talk about my list and why I think that, and I'm going to split mine into the types of champions. So first off, let's have a look at the damage champions. So for me, Cassie definitely is an A+ champion. Played right, if you're getting all the shots, you're using click fire. Basically, you're not holding onto the mouse button, you're clicking every shot. When you knock somebody back with your right click, you're getting that extra damage on that hit. And you're getting every hit after you roll, so you get extra damage there as well. Cassie is definitely a monster and can do not just the most damage, but does significant damage to one target and can take them out quite easily. She also has that cauterize in a Q that basically reduces the healing by so much, so she's got a lot of utility there too. Her ultimate might be weak, but it's not let down by everything else. So yeah, Cassie's mobility, especially with the incitement cards to reset her roll, and the fact that every time you roll you get the extra damage, means that she is such a powerful machine. hi-rez actually did nerf her 50 damage on her bow, but that still wasn't really enough because Cassie doesn't have any damage fall off, so 50 damage isn't as big as the Androxus I'll talk about later. They got a damage nerf, but they do have drop off. A lot of people are calling for Cassie to have some nerfs to her cards to stop her having the mobility, but one of the things I love about Cassie is the fact that she is so mobile. So really it's looking back at drawing the damage in for me, maybe cutting off some of the extra damage on some of the moves, either the right click or the roll, maybe only having a cooldown on the extra damage when you roll, so you only get off the first roll and then it has like an inbuilt cooldown. Something like that might work, or maybe even giving her damage drop off and seeing how that works, maybe buffing it back up to 700 damage really up close and then having a drop off then. That might That'd be worse than having the 50 damage just off the top of the damage. And then second for me is Drogos and Charlene. Drogos is still really good, and even though he has had the mobility nerf, his damage output can be insane, and especially because a lot of people pick Haven over Blast Shields, his damage can get through unmitigated. And his Fire Spit is his biggest utility, and you'll be using it a lot, and there's the cards that reset it for every person you hit, so you can basically spam it pretty much onto a point, and you're getting the maximum damage on everybody around that point. Pair that with Drogo's ultimate, probably one of the best ultimates in the game, being able to just kill somebody in one, unless they have a Fernando and they can block it, but he is taking out that Makara at the moment, who is very pesky when he ultimates. Charlene would definitely be on the A tier as well with Drogos, and he's actually come into light and been fleshed out, and in competitive play a lot of people are playing him in more strongly, and it's a combination of having that extreme damage from his Q is planted and being able to take down tank shields, take out tanks themselves, well really anybody he's firing at, and basically somebody that can flank around. People are using the mobility quite well, like flinging yourself backwards and sort of flicking yourself so that you can get away. That people are using the skewer really well. Skewer is a big one. Getting somebody knocked onto a wall and then being able to Q planted them and kill them in one is seeming to be pulled off quite a lot. Not quite on the level of Drogos and Charlene, but I'd say Victor is definitely up there. He's one of the easier champions to use, and in lower tier play, he's definitely one of the champions that does get to shine. But what I'm talking about today is how people can be used to their fullest, I guess. And Victor does have a lower skill ceiling, but still, he has both direct damage from his gun and loads of area damage with his grenades, and you can spam those grenades with lots of cooldowns for everybody you hit as well. And basically something that's good with aiming, getting those headshots, positioning, so you're getting in the side and picking people off, and also getting those grenades off. They're going to do a lot of damage, and he's definitely almost up there with Drogos and Charlene for me. Bomb King has seen quite a big nerf to his movement in, I think it was OB39, not this latest one, and basically changed the momentum of his knockback. Basically, you can't knock people off the edge anymore very easily, and also you can't really fly across the whole map anymore. You still can do it, and you have to sort of time it better and look where you're going a bit more, but you can get around still quite quickly using your Poppy Bomb. But personally, I think it's been a big knock to the character, who wasn't really OP in the first place. He was probably just in that good feeling, good tier of champions at the moment. But he is a champion with a lot of stun. He's got a lot of point control, and also single target damage when he gets all of his sticky bombs off can be quite insane. But I think because he's a big target, he's still quite squishy, and his movement's been cut. He's not being picked up so much, and I don't think he quite makes it onto the pedestal of A-class damage champions. Canessa is one that I think can be very strong, and going off of the full potential of the character can be insane, but it really depends on the map she's played in. So it's not that Canessa's bad, and being a B is not a bad thing, but she's great in certain maps. These are more open maps, and maps that have some sort of height to them, so that you've got places to teleport to escape to, or keep moving around to confuse the enemies and to keep having new places to fire from. That's like Timber Mill, Serpent Beach, Fish Market, and Frog Isle. I think she's really strong on, especially Serpent Beach, because there's so many places to get up and get into good sniping spots, and then keep changing those locations so that a flanker is going to have a hard time trying to get to you. But otherwise, you can be shut down by a flanker if you aren't careful, and if the flanker is really good. But if you can do the dodges, you can keep moving around, and you can get all that damage off. Canessa definitely can be an A-class champion and be the tyrant of the battlefield. And with that pun, let's get on to the one that I think is actually one of the lowest at the moment. That's Tyra. Tyra may be in the meta and that loads of people are picking her, and she's another one that is very dependent on the situation. So if an enemy team does take 2 tanks, or maybe they're being silly and they take 3 tanks, then Tyra is going to be great at trying to put that damage on the point with her Molotov. But her biggest downfall, and it's massive, is that she has no movement ability, she has no escape. And it's just such a big downer on her as every other character has it, and it's not just about escaping, getting away from enemies that are attacking you, it's about chasing down enemies that you need to kill. Her ultimate is good, and it puts out loads of damage, but enemies are able to kill you whilst you're using it as well, and you don't have that much extra speed to go down and chase people down with it. For me, Tyra is just a weird character in general. Why does a hunting character have a automatic rifle? Why does the hunting character have a Molotov? And I know that they wanted like an extreme damage character without much movement, but it doesn't really feel like Tyra is that. Maybe a whole rework of Tyra would be a good thing. I know that's not what we're going to get, but maybe bear traps instead of the flames. Maybe have some sort of escape. Maybe change the rifle to be a like bolt action or semi-automatic, a bit more like Cassie's crossbow fire. Might really fit her as a hunter, but at the moment she just isn't there for me, and it's mainly in the movement and being able to have that escape and chase down. Flankers is another big one, and again I'm talking about using champions to their full potential, so not generally in all the levels of play are these going to be the best, and the A+ one for me, and probably the only character that I'd say is a little bit broken in the game at the moment is Evie. And you might think, well, actually, Evie just got a nerf, Josh. What are you talking about? But the thing is, I think more and more people are getting better with Evie. And when you see the pickups, a lot of the time she gets picked first in competitive games. And what you can do with her is basically just teleport into the air, drop back again, teleport back, fire off, without ever being hit. And I think that's the big thing about it. You never need to be taking damage. You can play so that you can just teleport into the air, and be almost unattackable, because people aren't going to be able to expect you, not just in the XY axis of coming around in their area, but also the Z axis, so basically height, is very hard to predict. And you have a lot of other skills, like the saw is like the second movement ability, so you've basically got two. She's just insane at moving. If Tyra is rubbish at moving, Evie is amazing at it, and her weapon also is a glass cannon and is given buffs by the teleports, but this isn't necessarily the thing that makes her overpowered. And it helps that she is a blast damage or AoE damage champion. As I've mentioned before, a lot of people will pick up Haven because most champions in the game are based in direct damage, which is countered by Haven. So your damage likely isn't going to be mitigated, although a squishy damage like Kinessa or support who you're going to be chasing down and killing quite easily will probably take blast shields just for you, so that you don't give them hell in that game. But the best Evies in games at the moment can completely change the tide of games and can almost be unhittable. And you often see in games and competitive games and higher levels, the Evies not really dying a lot. They might be able to be harassed and made to run back, but they don't necessarily have to die because they can just get away so easily. Another thing with Evie that isn't mentioned a lot is that you get your ultimate back really quickly, and that's because you get so much ultimate charge every time you hit somebody, and you can pretty much spam that ultimate. And it's not the best ultimate in the game, but it basically stops people from using their movement abilities and can catch them for your team to basically clean up, and being able to spam that quite a lot is a big advantage. And I didn't mention, but with Evie, the wormhole card and the healing card makes it so that you can, when you're jumping in and out, you're healing up all the time, so you've got the sustain, you've basically got extra health because of the heal and because you're jumping in and out, and you get away and you heal up. So yeah, with Wormhole, even at level 2 now, I think 2 seconds, you've got enough time to do a few shots, blink back again. Yeah, and some people are using 1 second Wormhole in the competitive scene, although I can't quite get used to that yet. I find it hard to blink back again. But Evie definitely is, in the right hands, the best champion at the moment. Next up is Androxus, who would be an A on the A+ sort of border for me, even though he has had a nerf, and it's more because he has damage drop-off, so it affects him across his whole range. I think it was only, still, he is the one champion that can do a lot of damage, and because if you have good aim, he's a hit scan character, and headshots give you a bonus damage that doesn't drop off over range, so that's a big bonus. But also, his movement is maybe better than even Drogo's in flying, because you can basically glide through the air rather than, well, you don't fly, but you can just basically glide to the floor, even without having any cards to change that. Also, with card combinations, he can basically reset everything that he has going for him. So his reversal, they can throw things back at people, he can reset that by hitting people with his pistol, and also he can reset his nether step by hitting somebody with his reversal. And I think that in the right hands, Androxus is definitely one of the best champions in the game at the moment, and can do a lot of damage with his hit scan weapon, getting headshots in the right, but also has that movement and escape that other champions don't have so much. But also he has an ultimate that is still really good and does a lot of damage, but since the nerf, it isn't as huge as it was before, that made him in the Reddit top 2 before in their list. And definitely he has got a little bit worse than he was, but still he's very much up there. Buck is next on my list, and there's not that much between Buck and Androxus for me. Buck has so much self-sustain in his healing, and does a lot of damage generally when he gets close up and personal, and has a huge health pool, more than Barrack, which is a frontliner. So he's basically like a big flying extra mobile tank. But that also is his detriment. Buck against a Makoa who can grab him, or a Meldamba that can stun him and stop him in his tracks. He is basically a massive target for a team to take out, and I think that's where his downside is mainly. His upsides are his extra health and his decent damage close up, and his maneuverability, but also he is such a big target and he's easy to lock down if you focus on him. Skye is definitely a B champion. She's got better than she was with a tighter cone of fire on her wrist rifle, but still she doesn't have that much mobility, in the sense that she isn't that fast when she goes into invisibility, and good players can sort of predict where you're going to go, and they'll just try and get close to you so that you actually reveal. And I don't think it's as big as a lot of people make it out to be, and in the top levels of play it isn't a huge advantage, but we haven't really seen her in the competitive scene at the moment, so maybe it's just because we haven't seen her played out that way. And she's definitely better than she was, I would say. She has had a nerf to her health, going from 2000 to 1800, which means she can be two-shot by some champions now, like Eevee, she can be two-shot by. But that increased accuracy more than makes up for that loss of health, and if you're playing now, you can get kills a bit further away than you could before, and that means a lot because your visibility is more important, as people will have to go further to basically reveal you. But I think it's still in a place where it's not quite far enough, maybe. Or that the invisibility is knocked off when people are not close enough, I guess, because at the moment she just doesn't have as much escape. She does have a good ultimate as well, does generally a lot of damage and makes people run off a point, but with the nerf to that, it isn't as good as it was before, and you can block it with a lot of things, and just getting into cover generally or running away from it. On frontliners then, Makoa is definitely in the top spot and is king at the moment, the King Turtle, and it's partly because of his increased damage that he's seen in, I think it was OB39, his main cannon got a damage buff, but also generally his role in the game. He can pull an enemy champion out of a fight, drag them in, and allow your team to focus them down. And he generally is very tanky, and his ultimate is great because it gives you so much survivability on a point, and you can last basically until your team respawns and comes back again. He can be countered by Drogos if a Drogos ultimate's on him and kills him, but generally Makoa is doing a lot in this patch, and is definitely one of the biggest picks on the frontliners. And very closely behind is still Fernando. He has the most health of all frontliners. He is the tank. He is basically the tankiest tank, I guess. And his shield is just generally a good utility. And he can do some pretty good harassment by doing a bit of flanking. And he's definitely still strong in this patch. He hasn't been nerfed into oblivion, even though he has lost some of his health. I don't know whether it was after OB38 or if it was OB39. So he's still in there. But then for me, Barrack is not quite in the running with Makoa and Fernando, and maybe he's like a B+, like close to an A. He can still do a lot of sustain. He's okay on his own, putting up lots of turrets, and if people don't take down those turrets, he can be a nuisance. And we have seen him in a few games, a few professional games, doing a lot of damage, doing a lot of work. He still has quite a decent escape by running with his rocket boots, but I don't think he's quite there with Makoa and Fernando and what they can do on their own as a frontliner. Then Ruckus is in a bit of an odd place. He's definitely not bad. I think a lot of people thought he was bad because you can get Rekka and reduce his health, and I thought that as well, but actually the sustained fire that he does, and in a lot of the competitive games now, that can really sway the tide of battles, and we're seeing him picked up a lot more now, and his Q on the point gives a lot of damage reduction and in an area, so he's not bad. He's just not quite as good as the other frontliners. I think the frontliners bracket is quite close actually. There's nobody that's really bad or one that's crazily overpowered. I just think that Makoa definitely at the moment has that utility and has a lot of damage to put out, and also is tanky as well, whereas Fernando is basically just tanky. Onto the supports or healers. Definitely at the moment, Maldamba is shining bright, both with being able to stun lock champions, especially tanks, or flankers trying to come in. He can stun lock them and stop them from doing lots of damage, but also he has so much heal at the moment. And if you watch somebody like Surretz play him in Team Cyclone, they can do insane amounts of healing. Like, they'll have like 7,000 damage done. I mean, the team will probably win, and he'll have like 90,000 healing done in a game, even when they're bringing out Cauterize and everything. The single target heal is pretty massive, and the gourd is also pretty big as well on Maldamba. He still doesn't have a great escape, but it doesn't really matter. He's invincible whilst he's slithering, and also with the deft hands he can basically stun spam. His ultimate is also great, and you can use it basically to stop people from pushing points, and it can be the thing that wins you a point, and it can be used on attacking siege payloads as well, quite well. Maldamba is probably the main pick at the moment for healers if you see it in these competitive games. Ying is still very strong, probably in the A bracket rather than the Maldamba A+. Just generally, she does a lot of healing. You don't really need to do a lot with her. Better Ying players will be timing the shatters and getting their illusions up all the time. And she did get a nerf to the card that basically kept up the illusions for longer, but I don't think that benefits all players, basically more for players that aren't as attentive and putting down their illusions in the right place all the time. So I don't think she was nerfed that badly, just that Maldamba is shining a little bit brighter at the moment. Pip definitely is quite a good character, and his ultimate can do a lot with the chickens, and generally has quite a bit of mobility, but like just generally all along, Pip's more of a flank character, and he is so hurt by Cauterize in his self-heal, so he gets a bit shut down by that. So I don't think he's quite an A character, but a B character. It's hard to say, because if somebody picks him up, then Cauterize is such a big thing, because you're probably going to need another healer. So that sort of is a detriment to the team, but then also you can basically spam your chickens and build that up, and that'll be like a point breaker, but generally good against big tank lineups because of his ultimate, and it just basically lowers everybody's health to a low level in the chicken. So he's situational, and I think that Grover has got slightly better with the extra damage on his axe and the slight health buff, but still, we haven't really seen him in the meta not really picking up, and he still doesn't quite do the healing of Ying. Maybe more survivable, maybe a bit more tanky, maybe a bit more able to sit on the point, but he's still in a weird place because he does fire, he does do more damage from further away, but then all his healing does it at close range. He's definitely got better, but still not quite into the meta. And then finally, the person that's the bumdinger of this whole list is Grok. Grok basically had his healing rain reduced from the healing. I think it did 4 times as much as it was meant to, the card that, on Grok. But that actually meant that his healing totem was actually quite useful because it healed people extremely fast. And at the moment it does do quite a bit of healing, but nowhere near what it was before. And I think because the totem can be destroyed, because its area isn't very big, and because it has a massive cooldown, it just isn't as useful as the Ying heals or any of the other heals in the game. And in the same way, and also his ultimate just has no self-sustain, so you can't really use it unless you're being shielded or you're with a group. And you're not necessarily going to get the right chance to use it, and it only really slows down enemies and does a little bit of damage and heals your allies. So it's a bit of an ultimate that is a bit meh. It just doesn't really do a lot, and if somebody uses it by accident, I'm never like, oh no, this ultimate's gone. Whereas a lot of other characters, the ultimates are like, but if Grok doesn't have his ultimate, then so what? I think Grok definitely needs looking at, maybe having some extra heal. I said this last time actually, I think they needed like an extra totem, maybe like an aggressive totem or something like that to really spice him up, or maybe just looking at his cooldowns, maybe looking at the healing amounts, but it just isn't working at the moment, and Grok is definitely the weakest champion in the game at the moment. Anyway, that was talking the meta and going over all of the champions and which ones are best currently as of OB40 and probably the next few patches, because not a great deal is probably going to change unless we see some sort of weird full massive change for Season 1 that's announced at HRX on Thursday, but we'll just have to see. Either way, I think these lists are quite fun, and it's quite interesting to look at which champions are doing best at the moment, especially in the esports setting, so seeing how champions can be used to their full potential, I guess. Is there anything you don't agree with, or do you think this was a pretty good list, or has something surprised you on there? Be sure to let me know in the comments section below. Also, I'm planning on doing some subscriber tournament, but basically mixing people up, so you put your name into a hat and then you'd be put into a team, and basically playing the regions together and having some sort of point bracket, although we're working that out at the moment. It'd be done on the Joshino Discord, which will be linked in the description below as well. But that's something that I'm working on at the moment, and that could be rather fun. Not something serious, just for fun. That's why I want to do it to be mixed. I don't really want to tread on the toes of esports teams and stuff like that. But it's just like a silly sort of tournament, I guess. Anyway, subscribe for more of my content, and thank you all very much for watching, and a happy new year, everybody. Yeah, 2017 is going well. I'll see you all in the next video. Joshino.